Christmas dinner at Daniel and Nicole's house had all the trappings of warmth, but the air was thick with unsaid things.
Daniel set down his fork. Still lecturing us on how to raise our own kids, Thomas. Some things never change.
Thomas kept his voice even. I offered an opinion, Daniel, that's all. It wasn't meant as a challenge.
Daniel's voice rose. You've been challenging me since the day I married Nicole. Every visit, every comment, it's always a power play.
Nicole's hand trembled as she reached for Daniel's arm. Please, Daniel, it's Christmas. Dad didn't mean.
Daniel cut her off, eyes locked on Thomas. This is my house, my family, and I am done letting you undermine me.
Thomas slowly placed his napkin on the table. I never meant to undermine anyone. I only wanted to be a grandfather.
Then leave, Daniel said, and don't come back. You are not welcome here.
Nicole's shoulders shook. She didn't look at her father. I am sorry, Dad. I can't.
Thomas picked up his coat and stepped out into the December night. The door clicked shut behind him, and the snow swallowed the sound. The drive home was a blur of streetlights and silence, the car's heater unable to chase away the cold that had settled in his chest. He let himself into the silent house, the echo of his footsteps the only greeting.
I won't give them the satisfaction of a public scene.
He climbed the stairs to his study, the room where he'd always gone to think, surrounded by framed photos of the grandchildren he'd just lost. From a drawer, he withdrew a new leather journal, its pages blank and waiting.
Start from the beginning. Date it. Every detail matters now.
He wrote the date, then the words, Christmas 2022. Nicole chose silence. Daniel chose victory. I chose to remember.
His hand trembled, but his jaw set. This isn't the end. It's evidence.
That night, Thomas Kendall made a quiet pact with himself. He would not shout. He would not beg. He would document. He closed the journal and stared out the window at the falling snow, his reflection a ghost in the glass. The fight was over. The war, he knew, had only just begun. The morning of Liam's 9th birthday, Thomas opened the leather journal and began to write. His entry read, Today, Liam turns 9. The place is set. No one came. The first of many silent vigils. He then pulled a bright blue birthday card from a drawer and wrote inside with careful hope. The message said, Happy birthday, Liam. Grandpa misses you more than words can hold. Be kind, be brave, be happy. That evening, he went to the dining room and set the table for 4. One small plate with a child's fork, a napkin folded like a sailboat, a chair unused.
He touched the empty chair and said aloud to no one, I'll keep this for you. Every year, whether you know it or not.
The card returned 12 days later, unopened, the red ink of return to sender bleeding into the paper. He saved the outgoing voicemail on his machine, his own voice, steady, saying, Happy birthday, Liam. I love you. And each blocked email was printed and filed, the digital silence becoming paperweight in a box that would one day speak for him. 8 weeks after Christmas, Thomas placed a call to a name he'd circled in the phone book, James Harrison, grandparents' rights attorney.
Mr. Harrison, my situation is complicated. I need to understand if I have any rights left.
The following Tuesday, Thomas sat in a leather chair across from a desk weighted by law books and a man who'd spent 30 years fighting for grandparents.
Harrison folded his hands. In this state, a grandparent can petition for visitation if there's evidence of a prior significant bond, and that denial is harmful.
He slid an annotated statute book across the desk, a whole highlighted section on grandparents' standing after family fracture.
The court wants records, letters, calls, emails, every attempt you made. They need to see pattern and refusal.
Thomas opened his briefcase and placed the journal, the returned cards, the printouts on the desk. Will this matter?
Harrison glanced through the first pages, his expression sharpening. Mr. Kendall, this is more than most bring in 5 years.
I am not asking for a quick fix. I am asking if there's a road.
They shook hands. Thomas retained him that morning, and for the first time in months, the silence had a shape, a legal file, thickening slowly. Winter softened into spring, then hardened into summer. Yet Thomas kept his ritual. Journal, card, silence. He marked the calendar with red X's, a map of missed birthdays growing dense.
His own birthday came. The clock struck midnight. He didn't cry. He wrote another paragraph. His thumb traced Nicole's name on the phone. He didn't call. He knew what one angry word would cost.
The answering machine was full, his voice trapped. "It's Grandpa. I am still here." Returned mail filled a box he now sorted by date, not love. In his study, the journal grew thicker, the silence heavier, and the framed photos became a test of endurance.
A year. Not a word. I am a ghost in their lives.
The file from Mr. Harrison was now an inch thick, built on missed holidays and blocked emails. The law moved slowly, and Thomas matched its patience with his own. A court-approved observer collected photographs from neutral distances. A park, a school crossing, the far side of a playground. When the manila envelope arrived, Thomas opened it alone at his kitchen table, the morning light catching the first glossy corner. He pulled out the school portraits one by one. Liam at 11, Sophie at 8, Clara at 5, their faces older but unchanged at the core.
He set them side by side and shook his head. 3 strangers who carry my heart. How did you all get so big?
In the candid shots, Liam lifted Clara onto a swing while Sophie read on a bench, their lives spinning just out of reach.
He clipped the photos to the typed observer report and thought, at least I know they're alive. At least I can prove they were loved.
The observer's fee was significant, but Thomas paid it without hesitation. An investment in a future he refused to surrender.
He set the photos on the mantel, below the empty frame. You are not forgotten. Not a single one of you. He looked at the 3 smiling faces and felt the distance like a physical weight, yet it only anchored his resolve deeper.
He stepped onto his porch, looked toward the distant blur of a park, and understood the next move would be his. One Saturday, Thomas drove to the city park where his observer had noted the children often went.
I'll keep my distance. I just need to see them real, not on paper.
The playground was alive. Liam pushing Clara on the merry-go-round, Sophie reading in the shade. Then Liam's head lifted. His eyes swept the park and stopped on the old man in the blue blazer. Thomas smiled, but the smile died when Daniel strode from the parking lot, his face hardening. Daniel walked straight to the children, his voice cutting the air before he even reached them.
Kids, we're leaving now.
He grabbed Clara's hand, barked at Sophie to move, and shot Thomas a look of pure poison.
He saw me as a threat. That's what I've become to them.
He sat motionless until the minivan disappeared, then walked to his car with a stone-cold clarity. At home that evening, Thomas lowered himself into his armchair and closed his eyes. The silence was louder than the park had been. A sudden pressure clamped around his ribs, sharp enough to stop his breath. He gripped the armrest, waiting.
I can't afford to ignore this. Not with everything unfinished.
The next morning, in a sterile examination room, the doctor was blunt. Medication, rest, and stress was no longer an abstraction. It was a medical asset or a weapon. If not managed, it could take everything before Thomas could claim it back.
He stared at the pill bottles on the nightstand. If I wait much longer, I might not get to choose when I file. He dialed Harrison's number. James, it's Thomas. We need to finalize the petition. This week.
Thomas, we need a few more pieces. The psychological evaluation.
Then expedite it. Whatever the cost. I've run out of patience and apparently time.
He hung up, the phone heavier than before. The pill bottles on the nightstand stood like sentinels, marking the new urgency. 3 days later, Thomas walked into Harrison's office carrying 2 file boxes, each one a year of silence. On the conference table, the evidence was arrayed: the journal, the returned mail, the observer reports, the photographs.
Harrison lifted the journal. This is the soul of the case. The The court needs to hear it in your own hand.
He opened to a random page and read aloud, Sophie's 7th birthday. Set her place. Sang alone. The cake went stale.
Thomas's jaw tightened. Every entry is a scar, James, but they prove I never stopped.
They compiled the petition, 247 pages, each one a weight that Thomas had carried for over 2 years.
Harrison slid the final page across the desk. This is the signature that starts everything. Once it's filed, they'll know.
Thomas took the pen and signed without hesitation. They should have known 3 years ago.
The petition was scheduled for filing the following Monday morning, a sealed action that would detonate on Daniel's desk. Thomas returned home and sat in his study. The evidence box is now emptied. The walls of his silence finally turned outward. The clerk stamped it, and 247 pages became a sealed case number, filed and certain. That morning, Thomas sat in his study, waiting. The phone buzzed.
Thomas, the petition has been filed. The process server will serve Daniel this afternoon.
Then it's done. Thank you, James. I'll wait for the call. He looked at the framed photos. Stay patient. The hard part is over, but the storm is coming.
3 days later, the filed copy arrived. He traced the seal with his thumb. He added it to the evidence box, which now held only one document, the petition itself. The waiting began in earnest. Days passed in the quiet house, each hour a held breath. At the dining table, 3 empty chairs reminded him of the risk. The storm was no longer a question. It was a matter of when. 3 days later, a process server in a plain sedan pulled up to Daniel Reeves's office tower. Daniel was at his desk when the server extended the envelope. He took it, irritated, thinking it was another contract. The server left without a word. Daniel tore open the envelope and pulled out a thick stack of legal paper.
What the? He scanned the first page, his face draining of color.
The title read, Petition for Grandparent, Visitation. Below it, the name Thomas Kendall.
Daniel's hands trembled as he flipped through the pages. The old man actually did it. He's suing me.
He snatched his phone and dialed Nicole, his voice a raw, shaking fury.
Nicole, your father just filed a court petition to see the kids. After 3 years, he's dragging us into court. Daniel didn't wait for a reply. He hung up, and the receiver clattered across the desk.
The petition lay across his desk, 247 pages of a silent war he never saw coming. That evening, Daniel stormed into the house. The petition envelope crumpled in his grip.
Your father just filed a lawsuit. Read what he's been doing for 3 years. He threw the envelope onto the table.
Nicole opened it slowly. On top was a leather journal filled with her father's handwriting. The first entry was from Christmas 2022. Nicole chose silence. Daniel chose victory. I chose to remember.
Her hand trembled. He wrote down everything, every birthday, every call. Oh God, Dad.
She read further, each page a new wound, the returned letters, the blocked emails, the empty chairs. Sophie's 7th birthday. Set her place. Sang alone. The cake went stale. Nicole choked.
He sang alone. Her mind repeated it, and the sob broke from deep inside. She pressed the journal to her chest, tears streaking her face. I did this. I let this happen.
Daniel turned from the window, his voice hard. He's manipulating you. This is exactly what he wanted.
In the days that followed, the petition moved through chambers. The judge read the 247 pages and issued a short order.
Harrison called Thomas. Thomas, the court has granted supervised visitation. Mediation is scheduled for next month.
Thomas sat in his study, the phone pressed to his ear, his eyes closed. Then it's really happening.
At the Reeves home, the order arrived by certified mail. Daniel opened it, his fingers stiff.
Supervised visitation, he spat. The judge thinks that old man can just walk back in.
Nicole held her own copy, her voice thin. Daniel, maybe the judge saw what we missed. Maybe Dad never stopped trying.
Daniel shook his head. You are letting his sob story change you. We need to fight this.
She looked at him for a long moment, then walked out of the room without another word. The mediation date was circled on the kitchen calendar, a Friday in 2 weeks. For the first time in 3 years, the silence in that house was not Thomas's, but a fracture growing between husband and wife. 3 nights before mediation, the house held its breath. Daniel broke it first.
You've been cold for days. Just say it. You are choosing him over me.
Nicole's voice broke. I am not choosing anyone. I am just finally seeing what we did to my father.
Daniel's eyes flashed. We protected our family. He undermined me from day one.
Look at this. She held up the journal. He set a plate for Sophie every birthday. Every single one. That's not undermining. That's love.
Daniel knocked the journal from her hand. It's manipulation, Nicole. He's using your guilt to win.
She bent to pick it up, her whisper cutting deeper than a scream. The only person still fighting is you.
Daniel stared at her for a long moment, then turned and walked out, the front door slamming behind him.
She sat alone on the couch, holding the journal, the house emptier than it had ever been.
In 3 days, they would sit across a table from her father. But tonight, the silence between them was louder than any argument. The mediation room held 4 chairs around a round table, the morning light falling in thin slats across the wood. Harrison sat beside Thomas, Daniel and Nicole opposite, the distance between them already measured in miles.
Thomas spoke first, his voice low and steady. I am not here to punish anyone. I am here because 3 years is too long to be a stranger to my own grandchildren.
Nicole pressed her knuckles to her mouth, but the sob escaped anyway. Dad, I didn't know. I didn't know about the journal, the birthdays. Her voice broke entirely. I am so sorry. I should have called.
Daniel said nothing. His arms were crossed, his jaw a locked door. The mediator reviewed the file one last time, then spoke without preamble. The evidence of a sustained bond and deliberate exclusion is overwhelming. I am recommending supervised visitation begin next week. Daniel's chair scraped back, but he caught himself halfway and sat again, his defiance dissolving into something smaller. The recommendation was a step, not an arrival. But after 3 years of silence, even a step was a roar. That evening, a car pulled into Thomas's driveway. Nicole stepped out alone, her face raw and swollen.
She raised her hand to knock, then froze. The door opened before she could touch it.
Thomas looked at her, and for a long moment neither spoke. Then he said, I knew you'd come.
Nicole's composure shattered. Dad, I am so sorry. I was weak. I let him take you from us.
Thomas pulled her into his arms, his own voice rough. You are here now. That's the only thing that counts.
They stood on the porch, holding each other as the sky deepened to violet.
Inside, over coffee, Nicole wept again. The journal, Dad. I read every word. You never missed a birthday.
Thomas reached across the table and took her hand. And I'll never miss another one. Not as long as I am breathing.
They talked for hours about the children, about Daniel, about the long silence that had finally cracked open. When she finally left, the porch light seemed a little warmer, the empty chairs a little less permanent. The following Saturday, a bright visitation center hummed with nervous energy. Thomas arrived early, smoothing his blazer again and again.
Nicole knelt in the hallway, her voice gentle. Your grandpa is here. He's missed you more than you can imagine.
The door opened, and 3 small figures stepped inside, their eyes scanning the unfamiliar room. Liam's chest tightened. He remembered the man who used to lift him onto his shoulders.
Thomas knelt slowly, his knees stiff. Hello, you 3. It's been a long time.
Sophie clutched her book tighter. Mom said you wrote us letters. We never got them.
I did. Every month. I hope you'll let me tell you about them someday.
The silence stretched, filled only by the soft ticking of the wall clock and the weight of 3 years. Liam took a hesitant step forward. I remember you, he said, his voice smaller than it had been at 12. It wasn't a reunion yet, but in the small step of a 12-year-old boy, After 1,000 days of silence, it was a start. Thomas led them to a low table where he'd placed a worn photo album and a small stuffed bear.
I kept a few things. This bear, it was Clara's favorite when she was small.
Sophie's eyes caught the cover of a book beside the album, a title she knew well.
That's the first book I ever read to you, Sophie. You made me read it 4 times in one night.
Sophie's lips twitched. I still like that book.
The tension in the room shifted, just a half degree.
He handed the bear to Clara. This belongs with you.
Clara took it with both hands. Mine?
She hugged it tightly, burying her face in the fur. Liam stood apart, watching but not yet joining, and in that moment, 3 children began to remember what they'd almost lost. As the visit wound down, Liam dropped onto the bench next to his grandfather.
Grandpa? His voice broke. Why didn't you ever give up? Why?
Thomas's eyes glistened, but he didn't flinch. He'd been waiting for someone to ask that.
Because none of you ever stopped being mine. Not for a single day.
But you could have moved on. We didn't even know you were trying.
Moving on isn't in a grandfather's bones. I loved you through the silence. That's all.
Liam broke then. He threw his arms around Thomas, holding on with everything he had. Thomas held him tight, his own tears slipping free, silent and unashamed. Sophie and Clara drew close and rested their hands on Liam's back, the circle repairing inch by inch. When the supervisor called time, no one moved. For the first time in 3 years, the silence did not hurt. Through the observation window, Nicole had watched every second, her hand pressed against the glass as if reaching through. When the door opened, she crossed the floor and pulled her father into a fierce embrace.
Thank you, she whispered. Thank you for not giving up. Not on them, and not on me.
You are my daughter. Giving up was never in the contract.
They held each other until the supervisor cleared her throat, a gentle reminder that the time was up.
Next Saturday, same time. I'll bring the good coffee, and maybe a board game.
I'll be here, with the photo album and a deck of cards.
She laughed, a sound that had been absent for 3 long years, and it lifted the air between them. They walked out together into the afternoon sun, and for the first time, the future held more light than shadow. A single visit, a single question, a single answer. It was more than enough to begin again. A month later, Thomas's dining table held 5 plates, and the candles he once lit for ghosts now burned for voices he could touch. When the doorbell rang, 3 small shadows burst through the hallway, and for the first time in 3 years, the house filled with chatter.
We brought cake, Dad. Liam chose the frosting. It's the one with the sprinkles.
Then let's light the candles. I've been saving these ones for a special occasion.
They sat together, the empty chairs finally occupied, and the old wood of the table seemed to exhale.
Clara tugged his sleeve. Grandpa, look! She held up a crayon drawing of a family, a silver-haired man at the center.
Thomas knelt stiffly. Is that me? You made me the tallest.
Because you never left, she said, her voice matter of fact. And Thomas had to look away for a moment.
Nicole leaned in the doorway, a cup of coffee warming her hands, her eyes full but her smile easier than it had been in years. The journal was closed, but the table was open. And for Thomas Kendall, after 1,000 nights alone, that was everything. Evening settled over the house, and Thomas lowered himself onto the porch swing, Nicole beside him. In the yard, the children chased fireflies, their laughter stitching the dusk. Neither spoke, the swing creaked, and the quiet held everything that words could not.
Nicole broke the silence first. I was scared you'd given up, Dad.
Thomas shook his head. I was scared of the same thing, but I had a journal full of reasons not to. He looked at her, his eyes steady. Every page was a reminder that love doesn't need an answer to keep speaking.
She looked at the window, where a candle glowed beside his late wife's photo. He opened an album to a photo of all 3 grandchildren as toddlers, in his arms. The cost had been high, but the worth was right here. The porch light flickered once, then held steady, Small voices filled the house, and the night was finally soft.